All right, welcome everyone to tonight's Teen Science Cafe. Let me start my slides. What I would like, let's all introduce each other. If you can open up your chat, tell us who you are, where you are from. It's nice to be able to know where everyone's joining us from tonight. I am Lauren Traster. I'm the 4-H Teen and Leadership Program Coordinator. I run programs all over Vermont, but I am from Hyde Park, Vermont. See Lily's with us tonight, and oh, Ronak's here from Pennsylvania. We have Misha from Vermont, and Ari's here also from Vermont. I know there's a lot more of you out there. Bryce is here and Finn's here. Shae, our presenter, is also from Pennsylvania. So I see she gave a shout out to those of you joining from Pennsylvania. That's great. So keep introducing yourselves. Love seeing where everyone's from. We have Vermont, we have Maine, we have Pennsylvania. Anyone else from another state? Looking through the list. I think we have Vermont, Maine, and Pennsylvania today. Not bad. Okay. I am checking to see if our captioner has been able to join us yet. I apologize. If you need captioning, there is the option to choose closed captioning. We will get the live captioning up and running as soon as our captioner is able to join us. So let's just go over some protocols. Remember, please check your name on the participant list. Make sure you show up as you, however you registered. I'm going to be matching that, checking the registration list. If I don't see your name, I will be private messaging you. So please just go ahead and rename yourself so that it's clear who you are. I appreciate that very much. And just a reminder, while we are here on Zoom, for those of you who have not participated in Teen Science Cafes, we ask that you stay muted unless you have a question or a comment for the presenter. And we ask that don't raise your hand in your video because we can't see everyone, and most of you have your video off, which is perfectly fine. Use the raise hand feature in your menu. So if you open the participant list, next to your name, one of the options will be to raise your hand. We'll call on you and ask you to unmute yourself. But obviously you can just use the chat box as well. Use the chat to respond to any questions the presenter might have or comments you might have. Just please use the chat box only for tonight's presentation. Stay on topic. When there's side conversations going on, it tends to be distracting to people. And so if you just use the chat box to focus on tonight's topic, we'll be all good. As I mentioned, it's okay to have your video off, but if you do have it on, just make sure there's nothing going on behind you that would be distracting. Just kind of stay in one place, don't move around. And then we just ask that you stay engaged. Tonight's topic, I think, is a great one. I think you're going to love meeting Shay, our presenter, and hearing about her work with NASA. But before we get to that, I do want to share with you, after tonight, we have a lot of in-person cafes coming up. We have one on March 19th, another one on April 9th, and then on April 30th. And we have actually had to reschedule the one on April 9th, No More Knee Pain, Biomedical Engineering for Tissue Health. That is a new topic. Our mission to the moon had been scheduled for April 9th, but our presenter had a conflict and couldn't be there. So we've moved her to May 14th. So that's a new cafe that's just been added. So as you can see, we have 4 in-person cafes coming up this spring. And then there is one more virtual one at the end of March on quantum computers. So you can learn about these cafes at our youth announcements page. And hopefully you all will join us for those. Also, we are starting to plan our Summer of Science programming We're starting to line everything up. I know we're going to have a week-long summer science exploration camp right on the UVM campus at the end of July. There's going to be a half-day vet science workshop with some local vets in Lamoille County. We have a natural resource management academy and fun. I just was talking to someone earlier today, planning a bunch of watershed science related workshops, like going out on the research vessel on Lake Champlain and doing some fish dissection, doing some bike riding out to different sampling locations and more. So I think it's going to be a good lineup this summer. Hopefully this information is going to get posted within the next month. So stay tuned on that. Should be really fun. But we also do have 2 summer academies at UVM the last week in June, focused on agri-science and biotechnology. So it's called the Agrotech Innovation Summer Academies. There's 2 different summer academies. It is an application process, but if you get accepted, the whole week is entirely free. You can learn more about this opportunity at the website that's listed. I'll try to put these in the chat at some point tonight, but great opportunities. So think about checking them out. All right, let's get to tonight's topic, NASA internship research about the spacesuit. Our presenter is Shaeleigh Strange. Let me just tell you a little bit about Shae. She is an undergraduate student at Norwich University studying mechanical engineering. She is part of the Air Force ROTC and is going to commission into the United States Space Force as a developmental engineer this coming May. So she's going to graduate in May, and then she gets to go work for the Space Force. I hope you all have questions for her about that. Shae interned for NASA in 2021 with the assistance of the Vermont State Grant Consortium. She is a part of the xEMU team, which is responsible for designing the next spacesuit to the moon. How cool is that? Let's all welcome Shae, and let's learn a little bit about the work that she's done. Hi, Shae.
Right.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hi. Thank you for having me. So I'm going to start sharing my screen here. Right here.
And I just want to say our captioning is up now. I just put the link in the chat. So if anyone needs the live captioning, we are good to go.
Okay, so hi everyone, it's really nice to meet you. I'm Shaeleigh Strange, and I'm going to talk to you about my time at NASA. I can talk more about Space Force or Air Force in general and space opportunities there. They're really cool stuff that the military is doing going forward. But I'm going to talk mainly about my NASA internship. So let's get started. Here's a little bit about me. You can see the overwhelming amount of dog pictures on this slide, and that is because I absolutely love my dogs. I couldn't keep them out of this one. So I have 2 dogs. I have Reese and Charlie. Charlie is the brown one, Reese is the white one, and they're my life just as much as space is. Again, I go to Norwich University. I am graduating in May. I've been a part of the Air Force attachment here, and so they told me that I had the opportunity to go to Space Force. So I will happily be graduating as one of the first cadets going into the Space Force directly from commissioning. So it's really awesome. In the bottom left side is when I found out that I got the job I wanted and I got the branch that I wanted. Super exciting moment for me. And yeah, now I'm just riding it out, and I'm going to go to Kirkland Air Force Base in New Mexico come this summer. So I'm really excited. This is an overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. So I'm going to first go over why a spacesuit is important. Like, why do we need these? What the difference is between spacesuits. The spacesuit that I specifically helped work on, the xEMU suit, how they went about testing the suit, and all about coding, because a lot of my job, even though I'm a mechanical engineering major, I did a lot of coding at my time at NASA. And then I'm going to have a short plug for NASA internships, and then we'll finish out with a Kahoot. So first, why is a spacesuit important? It's all about the space versus Earth environment, right? So we need to emulate what we need in space is what makes us livable for us on Earth. So space is really hot and really cold. So any point that you are in space, if you're in direct contact with like the sun's rays, it can get as hot as 250 degrees Fahrenheit. And to put that in perspective, water boils at 112 degrees Fahrenheit, which is extremely hot and burns our skin. So 250 would really hurt you. And in the same breath, if your back wasn't facing the sun, it's experiencing negative 250 degrees Fahrenheit at the same time. So comparing it to the weather up here in the Northeast, if the wind chill is below negative 18 degrees, you can only stay outside for 30 minutes. So think of what negative 250 degrees feels like in space. Another important thing is oxygen. We need oxygen to breathe. Space doesn't have the oxygen available. It's a vacuum. So we need to create that environment so the astronaut can actually breathe and live. Another important thing is the sun's rays. So the visor actually protects us from the visual damages that the sun can have. And it keeps them safe as well, so they can look around freely. Another thing that's important is particles in space. So when we think of space, we think of people just floating around freely, but that free roaming space can cause particles to be really fast. It can go at any speed, nothing's slowing them down. So something as small as dust particles, when it comes in contact with the spacesuit, it can actually penetrate it. So the material has to be pretty tough to withstand if we're going to run into anything. And it keeps you safe because it travels faster than a bullet sometimes. So that's really important that the spacesuit can do all of these things in one. The spacesuits, I didn't know this before I started working with NASA. They actually evolved over time. We don't use the same spacesuit for every mission because each mission had its own tough points. So like for the Mercury mission, so this was our first space mission ever that we actually put astronauts in space, into orbit. And there is, fun fact, the Mercury suit was only worn inside the aircraft. So we weren't even worried about all of that stuff I just talked about. We were more worried about just keeping them protected if something were to happen to that capsule. We weren't actively trying to go out and explore space at that point. So their suits weren't made to protect them from particles. That's what their spacecraft was for. So I have a quick question. True or false? The Mercury program was the first time NASA astronauts flew into space. I already answered this one, so I'll let this one slide for now. People are answering. Okay, good. Yep, it is a true statement. It was the first time that we flew astronauts into space. The Russians were the first ones. They beat us to this one, but it was the first time NASA was able to do it. So it was a huge accomplishment for this mission. And if you look at these suits, there's a lot of different things you can tell about them. So they had more of like a thermal lining on the outside. That way they could stay warm. They didn't have the best like ventilation systems in these spacecraft. They could only send one person up at a time, which was really crazy. They were really, so when we think of a space, we think of like, oh, they must have had a lot of room to like roam. But in reality, they just orbited the Earth and they came back down. They were crammed in between all of this equipment. So that spacesuit kept them protected essentially from the environment inside the spacecraft. The next mission, the Gemini mission, I'll ask the question first so I don't spoil it this time. True or false? NASA's first moonwalk happened in this program. Let me take a peek at the chat. False, okay. Thank you, Ben. True, okay. True. It's true or false? NASA's first moonwalk happened in this program. False, okay. So we have some differing opinions here. So it was a little bit of a trick question. So we didn't change your mind. We didn't actually go to the moon on this mission. The Gemini mission was just so we could go around and we could get someone out in space. So if you look at the suit, it has the oxygen on it, has all the equipment. So we just sent someone out into space and brought him back. We were like, okay, we can do this. The suit can accomplish this. Awesome. And you can see they have the sun visor on, which protects their eyes again. So the Gemini program, so each space program goes a little further. What can we press this time? What can we test these suits to do? How far can we go as humans? And the Gemini missions, there was 12 in total. So like each mission has a certain amount. So like when we talk about maybe like Apollo missions, which are the most known of the missions for the spacecrafts, we talk about, you know, Apollo 11, which is when we actually landed on the moon. But we don't talk about all of the things that lead up to it, right? All of the testing that goes in behind the spacesuit before it even gets to that 9th mission, that 10th mission, that 11th mission. So yes, hold on, let me, my screen just went out. Okay, so Gemini was the first one to hold 2 people as well, which is really cool because on the first mission, it could only hold 1. So bringing more people into space, accommodating it. Again, they were still crammed in there pretty tight, so it wasn't the most comfortable spaces, but this was a very successful mission. Okay, next up is the Apollo suit. I have another true and false for you. The Apollo suit boots had rocks in it so that they could walk as if they were on Earth. True or false? This one's a bit tricky. True. Okay. False. True. True. Braden must be really confident. He had 2 trues in there. Question mark. Okay. Okay, so they actually didn't have rocks in them. They wanted to be able to test, like, you know, it's our first time on another planet and really see like how the gravity actually works. Every part of NASA's mission is very much another point of something to study, you know? So there's a whole branch dedicated to how we walk on the moon. How are we going to adjust to that? So you can watch a lot of funny videos out there of the astronauts first getting on the moon, and they fall a lot. They spring like rabbits and they don't realize that the gravity is a little bit different than walking on Earth. We couldn't prepare for it probably as much as we wanted. They probably learned some new things along the way. But yes, please look up those videos. They're funny, but this is a problem for the spacesuits, because if an astronaut falls and they land on a sharp rock, what's going to happen to that spacesuit? Is it going to tear? Is the material strong enough? Is there enough oxygen in the tank? And what is, screen again. So what is different about the Apollo mission? So if I go back a slide, if I can. So the Gemini suit has a very small visor on it. And that's because we weren't really concerned of different factors. When we get to this new mission for Apollo, you notice the visor really opens up. And that's because that helmet portion actually doesn't really move. It's connected. So they can't like move their head and look down if they had a smaller visor. So this visor allows them to be able to see the ground without actually having to look. Another important part of the spacesuit is the gloves. So when we started doing spacewalks and when we started walking on the moon, it was really important that these astronauts could handle the tools and be able to have that dexterity to really accomplish the task. Because now we're looking forward to, okay, what can we do in space? Can we keep something in space? Can we keep something on the moon? But we can't take this suit off because it's our life support. It's our little Earth in our bubble. So they really worked on the gloves a lot so that the astronauts weren't fumbling around with mittens and trying to like put tools into places. So that was really important going forward. Another true or false, 12 astronauts in the entirety of history have walked on the moon. True. True, okay. False, okay. All right, well, thank you for participating. I love asking these questions during. So it is actually true. I found this, I actually looked this up. I didn't learn this at NASA. And the first time I looked it up at how many astronauts we actually have been on the moon, I saw 12. And I was like, wow, that doesn't seem like a lot of astronauts. And then Nisha, true, yes, it is true. And I was like, wow, that actually isn't a lot of astronauts, you know, in all of this time, all of these countries, but really only 12 people have ever been to the moon, which is really crazy because we're going back and we're going to put more people on, which is something to be really excited for. Some of you, if you're interested in the space realm, might be one of those people, man or woman to walk on the moon one day or live on it. which is really, really exciting. And a fun fact I have is the last moon landing was in 1972. It is now 2022. That was over 50 years ago was the last time someone walked on the moon. So technology doubles every decade. And some of these spacecraft that went up earlier had less capabilities technology-wise than you do in a smartphone, than we do having this meeting right now, which is crazy what we could do back then and what we can do in the future with more technology, which is really exciting to look forward to as well. Because now that we're 50 years down the line and NASA has put in all of this research, you know, there's so many things to look forward to that we can now do with all of this knowledge. Okay. Oh, went a little far forward. Okay, so now we're jumping forward. We're jumping past the ISS spacesuit, the International Space Station one. It is, that one was mainly built so that we could work on the International Space Station. It was really durable. Again, the dexterity in the gloves was important because they're always working on the International Space Station. You can look up live videos of it as they're doing it. The last one that I saw was like 8 hours long. Another important component of these spacesuits is that for missions like that, where they're out there for 8 hours, being able to go to the bathroom, drink water, communicate is also extremely important, so that they can do their tasks safely and a little more comfortably than it would be without those amenities in the spacesuit. So this is the new spacesuit that I was introduced to at NASA. When I showed up, I didn't even know there was a new spacesuit, and this is so awesome. So these will be for the Artemis mission. You can actually see on the back of the hut, so the oxygen tank, on the left side, the left sticker is the xEMU sticker, which is really cool. I have a shirt with it. And it's awesome that that small team will have something like that to go up there. I mean, they have the whole spacesuit, but they're represented. And people don't talk a lot about these teams. You know, you don't hear about them as much as you hear about the astronauts, but there's so much work that is put in behind the scenes so that these astronauts can accomplish these missions. And I think that's super awesome. So some updated things with the xEMU suit is, so they're listed all here on the sides, but again, I want to point out the visor. So this one, you can kind of see it's clear right now, the astronaut, and it's really connected to the back. So that way they still have the visibility and they can look down. They're planning on doing more walking on the moon, exploring in vehicles, so that they really want to be able to see what's below them so that they don't injure themselves, injure the spacesuit. Another cool thing to point out is they have no more Snoopy cap. So a Snoopy cap was something that they wore over their head. So it was like a prior suit that they put on before they put on the spacesuit that had all of their communications on it, so that it could talk to mission control in Houston or talk to the people on their spaceship. But now it's going to be integrated in the suit. So it adds like another layer of like things and amenities that can go into the spacesuit. Another crazy fact about spacesuits is they're all actually custom fitted for the astronaut. They have a list of all of the astronauts' measurements, and they're trying really hard to pick like nominal sizes, but for the most part, they still go with the fully customizable parts, because you don't want to be in something that might be too big up there. You know, if something's too loose, again, you might rip it, or it might make it harder to walk around in. If it's too small, again, you might rip it. And none of that is something you want in a foreign area where you have no oxygen around you, no other protections except for that spacesuit. Another important thing to note is the pressure. So if you look in the top right corner, it says 4.3 to 8.2 psi. That is because they found that you need different pressures for different situations. So the atmosphere doesn't have any pressure in it when you're in space. It's all a vacuum. So that pressure is another important factor of keeping you alive and safe and comfortable, to mimic more of what you would feel on Earth for your body. Because if you don't have that pressure, your blood wouldn't flow the same. One question, is Kevlar used in spacesuits? So I've heard the material bounced around a lot, but it's kind of heavy. So they don't use Kevlar too much. They have some crazy outlandish material that they use. It's new. I've never heard of it before. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Another important thing that makes these spacesuits different than ones previous is the boots. So when you're just in space, you don't really need any tread. You got nothing really to walk on. But for the moon, it's really important that they have the tread, that they can walk in again, because if they slip and they bounce around like you can see in the Apollo videos, it's not good for the astronaut, it's good for the spacesuit. We don't really account too much for that in testing if they're going to fall. We do it a little bit, but we're like, please don't fall in this spacesuit. We're trying to keep you safe. So they do a lot of training in the pool. So at Johnson Space Center, which is where all of the spacesuit team is based out of, they have something called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. And it's essentially like an Olympic-sized pool. It's super awesome to look at. It was one of the pictures I had on the flyer. So they use this to mimic like outer space, because you kind of feel like weightless in it. So they do that testing there, but it's still not going to be the same as like actually being on the moon and experiencing that kind of lack of gravity. Okay, so here's the picture of the NBL lab. That's one of the astronauts going in to test it. It's really cool watching him do stuff like this. But this is where the root of my testing comes in. We got a question. Do the pant legs unzip? No, so you kind of like, so there's a stand, it has a metal bar on the front. That was another thing I worked on, is they kind of, the legs are kind of solid. They don't feel like normal pant legs. So this bar sits around the waist. There's a big metal ring around, so you can kind of see he's connected to it in the picture, but they use that to don the spacesuit and don off the spacesuit. And they needed a new one for this spacesuit. So they kind of just jump into the bottom of it and they screw the top on. It's very interesting. So the pants don't unzip. There might be components in the pants that do unzip though. Is Artemis using SLS or Starship or both? I believe it's the SLS. That's what they're currently working on. Artemis 1, I think, is being tested March or April. So kind of like how I was talking about, like there is like 12 missions to the Gemini and there were 18 to Apollo. Not all of those missions involved going to space. So like when we talk about Artemis and like using Artemis, they've always talked about testing. Artemis 1 is just testing the rocket. So they're doing that down at Kennedy here soon. Please tune into that. That would be really cool to watch. And then they just build off that. So Artemis 2 will be, can we go around the moon? Can we go around the Earth? How are we going to connect to Gateway, which is like the new international space station they're going to use? So maybe they'll switch over to Starship at some point. I think that's the SpaceX thing, Finn, that you're referring to. They do have a contract right now with SpaceX, so that might be a possibility in the future. Okay, so back to testing. So I did not know exactly what part of the team I was going to fall into. So I was part of the PGS team, which is pressure garment system, but I was an intern during the remote part of COVID. So I wasn't able to be there at Johnson Space Center. They sent me a laptop and I worked from there. So it was limited a little bit on what I could do, but I have most of my information from attending all of the Zoom meetings that they had. They didn't even have their full staff there. And all of the briefings they gave, they were very good to the interns and letting us know like all of these cool things about what they did and what had come previous and why they do what they do now. So they had a list of things so that we could sign up for, and we could work on. Some projects were bigger than others. And I saw this one for coding, and it was all about testing the spacesuit and things that we could do to make that tracking better. So I signed up for it, not really knowing what I signed up for. And my mentor took me in and was like, hey, have you ever done coding? And I was like, oh my goodness, I haven't done coding since high school. And the coding I did was Python. So I was like, I don't really know how Python's going to translate to this, but I was like, I'm here to learn. So show me what you want to do and I'll figure it out. I'll talk to people. I'll get the resources I need to do. So the task was to create, so they have an Excel sheet. I'm trying to think of the easiest way to explain this. So they have an Excel sheet that has all different parts. So let's just break the spacesuit down into like gloves, arms, shoulders, hatch, helmet, and leg movements. And every time they would go in and test, they'd be like, okay, we did 3 cycles of the right arm. And they would go in, they'd type the serial number, they'd say how many times they tested it, the date, and they would go away. But as you evaluate every single part of the spacesuit, you have a table for right arm, right shoulder, left arm, left shoulder, left glove, right glove, twisting, bending, stuff like that, getting into the spacesuit, getting out. So they're really testing the durability of the spacesuit. And they had an intern create, so you can see it in the bottom image. This is the front of the Excel. And she had the top one. So it says add data pressure / detailed testing. You can click on that button. Let me go back. You can click on that button and this is what pops up on your screen. It has, you can go in here, you can select arm sizing ring. You can select dawn on, dawn off, how many times you did it, left, right, or both. And she has multiple tabs here and you can have the serial number in the top. So this was super awesome because now it took those like 47 tables that they had to go through for each part, probably even more. Think of every option on here and you had to double that because right or left or both. And it would automatically put it into that Excel sheet. That way they don't have to go through every tab and find the table. It just takes a lot of time out of testing. So this just takes it, plops it right in. So what I did to build off of this was I made another one. So they needed even more tasks to do. So these tasks that I was handed was more of, how are we going to move on the moon? How is the spacesuit going to move? So the other ones were like rotations, pressure, stuff like that. This one was, so you can see here for an example, walking steps, 20 degrees, positive incline, 20% of field covered with 10-inch boulders. That's really specific. And that in itself is one table. But then you have to add another table for left arm. You have to add another table for right arm and another table for both. And then you have to do it all again with every single component. So all of the components on the left side in step 1. So I tried breaking it up so it was a little easier to read. So step 1, you click 4.3 PSI and you click your left or right component, whatever component it was. So you can see how many components here are in the spacesuit that we were testing. And then that goes and puts it into one of the translation tasks or ingress, egress, or setup and stowage. So it came out to be about 888 tables of just all of this stuff. And you can imagine, like, on a smaller scale, like having an Excel sheet that you can just go through 2 tabs and put it in there, it's no big deal. But when you have 888 tables, it becomes a massive document that's really hard to maneuver. So this just takes it and puts it in there. They put the cycles in and it clicks add data. I have an example code on the side. Let me move the chat out of the way here. So the example code is just one small piece. So if we were looking at the EVVA, so let's just say they scroll down, they hit EVVA, and if they click that one, so you could see here, those who are familiar with coding, this might look familiar. Then if they hit option -10 degrees, which looks like it's like the second option on the screen for step 2, then it's going to put it in that specific sheet, so the EVVA sheet, and then it's going to find the last row in the sheet and put it into those columns. So the AN, AO, AP is the column name. So it's the sheets were so big that it wasn't just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It got to the end of the alphabet and it had to go back to A, B, A, D for every single part. So this was probably the most tedious part of the task, was going, okay, so now I have to think and go through and say, okay, if the user comes in here and they click left and then one of these options, so I'd list out all of the options that they would need to go through. So I just kind of stabilized one point and I cycled through the options. So these are all the things that they can pick, program those, and then I go, okay, what if they picked right shoulder? Then I'd have to go through all of those options again. So it ended up being about 40 lines of code, luckily, or not 40,000 lines of code. So it's not like it's, it was a hard task to start up if you don't know coding too much. But once you got into the hang and like the repetition of it, it got easier. What got harder on the back end was if you messed up and you put in the wrong sheet or you put in the wrong column, it screws a lot of stuff up. And that was a really, NASA really prides itself in being very precise and making sure that everything that they do has a purpose, and that something that I created wasn't going to hinder the testing process. Or, you know, if I messed something up in here and the data didn't get inputted, then we didn't have the data for that test. And that was something that was super important because every data point matters. You know, that one data point might be the anomaly, it might be something we need to look at. Maybe we need to look at this screw. Maybe we need to reevaluate what material we need here. Maybe we should use Kevlar. Stuff like that is really important. Everyone is paying attention to it. So yes, on the back end, making sure that if I was the user, how would I mess this sheet up, right? So what if they don't put in a serial number? Well, then I'd have to go, okay, so if they don't put in the serial number, I need to write code that says if they hit add data button and this isn't in here, pop this up and say stop, like you need the serial number. Or making sure that when you did hit add data, that it popped up a confirmation that said, okay, this data has been added. Because the first time I did it, it didn't show that the data went in. So I'd click it and I was like, well, if I was the user, I don't know if this actually went in here or not. And I was like, is it supposed to show up this automatically? And I kept pressing it. And then I go into the sheet and I saw like 10 listings that said add data. I'm like, oh, I don't want them to run into that problem. I want them to understand that, okay, now the data has been added. Or adding the button at the top where if they didn't want to add, it cleared everything out of it and they could just leave the program and go check it out. And then there was a separate document that took all of those 888 tables and compiled it and said, this is how many cycles was done on the right arm. This is how many cycles was done if they were walking on flat terrain carrying 5 to 10 pounds. So it was a very, very tedious process, but it was so satisfying in the end, seeing that it was all working and knowing that I was contributing to that team and helping them test. You know, that team that doesn't get seen as much, that's working behind the scenes. Everyone always celebrates when the astronaut lands on the moon, but I can tell you that the people who made the spacesuit are they're first sitting back and going, oh my goodness, thank goodness they made it. But then they're sitting back and going, wow, like I made that, you know, I'm the reason they're able to be standing there. So they don't get as much recognition as they truly deserve, in my opinion. Like, it is insane the amount of work they put in day in, day out, the meetings they have, making sure that nothing can go wrong because lives are on the hand. That's a big part of engineering is, you know, we got to make sure this is right or something bad could happen, something unpredictable. So they try to test stuff as much as possible so it can be predictable. So I didn't mention this in the beginning. So this code is Excel VBA. It's not, if you have like a standard Excel Microsoft Office, I noticed on my school one, it doesn't pop up, but I think more advanced versions of the Microsoft Office have Excel VBA. So you can go in and do this with anything. I worked on budget sheets after, because once I realized that I can do this, and I became one, an Excel expert, and two, an Excel Visual Basics application expert, I kept hopping on projects and was like, oh my goodness, let me help you with this spreadsheet. And next thing you know, I'm in budgeting department and I'm like, yeah, I can make it so that they have huge Excel sheets that they were manually editing. And I was like, well, now I know I can make it where if you click on this button on this column and say, yes, we bought this, it moves it to a whole nother sheet. It just picks up that row and moves it to another sheet so they don't have to see everything they already purchased. That active sheet can just say, this is what still needs approved, this is what we're working on, and it can order it by importance. So like I made them a menu, so when they put stuff in, they could say, yeah, this is high importance, like we need to look at this like right now. It'll put that stuff at the top of the sheet and highlight it. So there's so many cool applications just outside of, well, really far outside of spacesuits, but it can be applicable to stuff like that. So we have a coding program happening right now teaching Python. Yes, Python is like the gateway to coding because it is a little easier to understand. It's pretty similar to Excel VBA. But what's super nice about any type of coding, here, I can go to the next slide while I talk about this because that kind of goes on this point. Python kind of, well, any type of coding gets you in that mindset of like, once you understand what coding's asking for and you know you need to specify everything, it makes every type of coding easier. So the examples I have on here are Python, C++ is a harder one, HTML is on the easier side if you're starting out, and Excel VBA, I would label that as easy. You definitely have to watch a few YouTube videos on it to understand its quirks. So each coding language has a commonality of if I do this, then do this. So just understanding that, like Python might want you to say like an A before you say do this, and then a B before say do this, just for an example that has nothing to do with Python. But maybe Excel VBA wanting you to put like C, then do this, then do this. So it's just a different way of formatting it, but they all accomplish the same thing. So once you have one coding language down, all of the other coding languages really open up because you get into that mindset of this is what the code is asking for. So I have some QR codes on the side here. Scan them if you want. Those are just free opportunities to look at coding. I remember using them in high school on, I think it was day of code, hour of code, stuff like that. And they really open you up to this is what coding is. And it's just a nice skill to have in your back pocket because again, I didn't apply to this NASA internship and think, oh yeah, I'm going to be doing coding. Because if they would have asked me that day one, I probably wouldn't have been too confident on my skills. I would have been like, oh, I did coding in high school, and it's really daunting going up to NASA and being like, well, I think I can do this. But they understand you're learning, so it's really nice. It's a really good time to open up those opportunities of branching out a little bit. I don't really do any coding here at my school for my major, but I did coding all summer. And it's a really, really good opportunity to, coding is just something you can apply to anything, any job that you do in life. Again, with the budgeting sheet, you don't need it, but it really made their lives easier to be able to organize and help organizing it. The biggest part of it was just making sure that I was able to foolproof it enough so that any user that went in, not with the intent of breaking the sheet, but it happens all the time. I ended up locking the entire department out of some spreadsheet one time, and I didn't even realize it, and everyone was emailing me. So foolproofing it for people like me who lock people out or, might break something or click somewhere wrong, and making sure that it's safe for them to use even after I leave and that it doesn't become a hassle at that point. Coding's supposed to make things easier, not make things harder. And that is the biggest part of it. Even if you're coding something small, it doesn't matter how small or how big it is or what crazy thing it can do. It's what will it do if someone messes up, and how are we going to preserve what it's supposed to do? So that was my coding plug. Now I'm going over to my NASA plug. So I'm going to talk about the image on the right first. So this is an image, very plain image of all of the NASA centers around the US. So I went to JSC, which is the one in Texas, but they're all over. And you can be 16 plus to apply. And what's super nice is they don't expect you to know rocket science if you're applying out of high school. They have internships specifically geared for, I'm a high school freshman, they go, okay, well, these are the internships at that level. oh, I'm a high school sophomore. Okay, here's our internships at this level. So it's not like you're going to be doing a graduate internship. And I think that's what's daunting to a lot of people. You look at companies like NASA and SpaceX and you're like, wow, they're doing such great things. How can I be a part of that? Like, I don't have that experience. Well, they'll give you tasks so that you can build on your knowledge and see if you're interested and be a part of the team without having to have your doctorates. And that was something that really intimidated me. It's like, oh, I'm just an undergrad, you know, I don't know if I really am qualified to work on a spacesuit team, but you are and you can. We had a high school intern with us and she was amazing. And yes, she couldn't do some of the crazy big tasks that I couldn't even do, but we were able to find work and still help the mission along, which is super awesome. And if you're in this meeting, you're not interested in STEM, you know, maybe you're like, oh, I'm interested in STEM. I want to work for NASA, but I don't know if I really want to go like the engineering route, turning wrenches, designing all this stuff. The internships, if you look around the DC area specifically, they are geared more for, so that's like NASA headquarters. And they do a lot of archive stuff. So if you're a history person, you can dig through, they have an internship, you can dig through all of the NASA archives and they're like, and we want to find out what they were talking about at this mission. They also have STEM outreach. So if you want to be a part of like a museum and talking to them and engaging students, kind of like what I'm doing with you, you can go there and talk to people and engage. Sometimes they're looking for how do we write this in a document better? So if you're more on the writing side, you can go there and you can figure out all of the technical writing stuff. I did a little bit of technical writing for my NASA internship. Really interesting because I was able to delve into these huge documents that had so much information. They're just like, yeah, we're just looking for this piece. So I was getting paid to do what I was going to do in my free time, which was read about NASA anyway. So stuff like that is super awesome if you're a little wary about the engineering side. And if you want to work with plants, at NASA, they have a lot of lectures for interns. So like while I was at JSC, we had a lecture for the plants at Kennedy Space Center. And they're like, yeah, we're over here growing plants and it's super cool because we can grow plants on the International Space Station. And this is why growing plants is way different than growing them on Earth. And I actually reached out and I was like, wow, that's like really crazy. I think I want to be a part of that team. So you might find a completely different branch of NASA that you want to be a part of, but they have it all. They are such vast internships and they will make sure that you have the ability to kind of cross-examine and look at other internships so that maybe you can talk to that department and work for them. So any way to be part of the team is going to help out. And these people there are amazing. They want to mentor you. They're super passionate. They will take time out of their busy day to talk to you about just whatever you want, you know. They're like, yeah, I've been at NASA for 37 years. What do you want to hear? And me, I wanted to hear everything. I wanted to know all of the experiences that they had and how I could possibly end up in their shoes with a real NASA job and to make that difference. Even if it wasn't like a direct to the mission, you know, walking on the moon, advancing that mission, but how to help the organization in other ways. There's so many great places to follow at NASA. I really don't think you could go wrong with it. So definitely apply for these internships if you are interested. I can answer a lot of questions about them too. Again, they are paid. So I actually got an awesome opportunity from the Vermont Space Grant, and they were able to pay for me to go down there because I got the heartbreaking news. They were the team that I was working for, xEMU. They were like, well, we would love to have you on the team, but we already have 7 interns. So we ran out of money. But if you can get someone else to pay for you, we will happily take you. And I was like, oh, that's so awesome. So I reached out to the Vermont Space Grant and they were like, yeah, you want to go down to NASA and work? And I was like, absolutely. So they were able to pay for me to go and give me this awesome opportunity so I can sit here and talk to you guys and let you know about those opportunities and all of this cool stuff about spacesuits. So in the top right corner is another QR code. That's the NASA internship website. I believe the application closes mid-March. The best thing to do is to reach out to the mentors and talk to them. And that's a pretty good way to make sure your application is noticed. It's getting to know the team before your application ends up in a big pile. And it's really great opportunity. Please jump on it. And you know, if NASA comes to you and is like, oh, sorry, we don't really want to pay for you, try routes like going to your state. So for example, I forget who said they were from Pennsylvania, but I had a problem with, I'm a resident in Pennsylvania, but I go to school in Vermont. So it was like, where do I apply for the space grant? So if you live in Pennsylvania, it's a little more competitive. It's a bigger state. And they actually pushed me up to where my school was, which was nice. So find out where you live, and you know, if Vermont doesn't work, if you're studying here, you can go to your home state. You can kind of ask around to those big organizations, and see if they could possibly help you for this this opportunity, because they're more than willing to send bright students to do these awesome things and possibly see these careers. Okay. So that was it for me. I can load up the Kahoot, and Lauren, I believe you said we're taking final questions after the Kahoot and after the feedback.
Yeah, let's play Kahoot, and then
Okay.
we'll do a quick poll and then final questions. So be thinking about the questions that you have for Shay, but she has some questions for you first. And you're going to pop the Kahoot info in the chat.
Yes, so I was just going to load it up, and then you guys should have the code to log in. Let me hit play. Okay. So we're going to do classic mode. All right, now let me get this up here. I hear the Kahoot music playing. It's always good. Okay, let me make this full screen. Can everyone see this all right? I hope so. I lost the chat bar. Okay. Let me know if you have any issues logging in. Awesome. Thank you, Carly.
Hopefully you've all played Kahoot before, but if not, do the www.kahoot.it, and when asked, you're going to put in the game pin of 3010893. And I see some of you are already getting in there, so that's great. And if you don't feel like, you know, logging in, you can still play along. You just won't get your score. You won't get your answers scored. So we'll see who's going to play. We'll give it a minute or so to let you all. Can you put it in the chat? Yeah, hang on. wkahoot.it and 3010893. All right, is anyone still trying to get into the Kahoot?
Yes, hang on.
Okay. Okay, Ben, did you get in? Okay, everyone in?
I believe so. So nice.
Okay, so go for it.
I gotta shrink this bar. Okay. All right. So I talked about all of these in some shape or form. So let's see if you guys remember them. How hot can space be? Oh, I'm so glad this Kahoot's working. Awesome. That's really great. I'm glad you guys remember that one. That's a pretty interesting fact. Misha taking the top of the scoreboard. So you win bragging rights for the next Teen Cafe if you get on the podium for this. How cold can space be? Nice, nice. See if Misha kept her spot. Oh, they're catching up to you. Why are spacesuits important? Awesome. Yes, space dust can travel many times faster than a bullet. And it's very important that that suit of the lining of the suit is thick enough to hopefully withstand some of those smaller particles. Okay, awesome. Got a new leader. Read these carefully. Yep, so Mercury was the first one, and we just wanted to go into space and say that we could be in space and sustain a spacecraft there without any problem. So good job. Awesome. NASA's first moonwalk was the Apollo program. Yep. Yep. So I switched that one up a little bit because before I had said Gemini was the first moonwalk, but Apollo was the correct answer. So I was trying to trip some of you up, but good job. Some of you saw through my tricks. What mission was the first one to hold 2 people in a spacecraft? Yep, it was the Gemini. No change in the leaderboard. Yep, so it was in 1972, 50 years ago, the last time you landed. So the first time you landed was a little over 50 years now. But the last time that we went there, it was 1972. Be careful on this one. Oh, that one was tricky. Yep, so it's Exploration Extravehicular Mobility Unit. I don't know if I directly said that one, but it was on one of the slides. The X throws everyone off. It throws me off too, but they just pick and choose what letter is going to be in the abbreviation. Awesome. So VBA was actually the one that I had talked about, Visual Basics application. That is the Excel program for coding. Addison taking the leaderboard. You have quite the lead there too. Oh, this one was supposed to be at the end. This is not a trick question, I promise. And that's supposed to say make at the top, not McKay. Awesome. I'm glad you guys are maybe going to look into more information. And those of you who aren't STEM people, thank you for joining us anyway and learning about spacesuits. You definitely still have some great opportunities at NASA if you choose to pursue that aren't necessarily STEM related. They also look for some other interests too. So don't count yourself out. Awesome. Yep. So we went over that one. That tricked a lot of people up when we went through the PowerPoint, but no, they did not have rocks in their boots. That was a very good one. All right. Let's see who ended up in first place. Addison, I believe it's Braden. I don't want to mess that up. I'm sorry. And Finn, congratulations on making it to the top of the space podium. All right. Lauren, I know you said you wanted to do. Oh,
yeah, I'm going to launch a poll right now. Just we do this every cafe. So on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Please rate new knowledge gained by coming to this cafe. So did you learn, if you learned a lot, give it a 5. If you learned a little bit, maybe you'd give it a 3. If you feel like you didn't learn anything, you give it a 1. So we're gonna keep it open, give everyone a chance to, looks like almost everybody. I'll give it another 30 seconds. Get you all to answer, and then we're gonna take questions. We are a little past 8. We're gonna try not to keep you too long. We'll see what questions you have, but we wanna make sure we can answer some of your questions. So I'm gonna end the poll. Thank you for doing that. And you can either raise your hand to unmute yourself, we'll call on you, or put your questions in the chat if you have any questions for Shay. And we'll give it a second. I know while you're all thinking, if you have any questions, Shay, can you just briefly tell everyone sort of the path that you took? I know you're an undergrad, you're a senior at Norwich University. So how did you end up at Norwich? How did you end up Air Force ROTC? And where did your interest in space and also with the engineering that you do?
Yeah. So I started out in high school thinking that I was going to go to the academies. I always had that crazy dream I was going to end up at a military academy. And I knew I always wanted to do space. It just always, stuck out to me. At first I thought I wanted to do astronomy. And then when I realized I was good at science and math and engineering, I was like, oh, maybe I can take more of that route and be a part of those like rover missions is where I really wanted to end up with the space things. And I got through high school and I was like, well, I don't really know if the academies are for me. But I applied for an ROTC scholarship coming out of high school. They said, we'll pay for your college. And I said, great, no questions asked. Like, I'll go there. I was already thinking of the military. And I was like, yeah, I definitely want to do the military. That was something always on my mind. Space was always on my mind. Maybe I'll find some way to work it out through the Air Force. So originally I thought I was going to do aircraft maintenance for the Air Force, do my time. They paid for my school and then get out and join NASA. And then my sophomore year was when Space Force was created and it was like, like everything opened up. And I was like, wow, now I don't have to leave the military, which I was kind of sad that I was like, oh, I kind of spent all this time building up for my career. And now I want to leave to actually do what I'm passionate about. But now that I can do the military and still do what I'm passionate about and the Space Force became a thing, I can go that route and still work with NASA, work with that government agency and accomplish that. But it's more geared for the military to be more on like the defense of our satellites, which is still super interesting to me. Any way I can work with space is awesome. So yeah, that's kind of how I ended up on this route. I didn't know I was going to Space Force until a few months ago, probably around that time that I wrote that flyer was right when I had found out that I got the job. So I thought I was still going to be Air Force, just doing like developmental engineering. I knew I didn't want to do maintenance after a while. But now everything just aligned. It's just been super awesome. And the NASA internship over the summer really confirmed it for me that this is something I want to do for like the rest of my life. So it's been a great journey.
That's great. Well, now you all know someone who's going to be working in the Space Force, someone that you can reach out to and maybe mentor you one day. So I'm going to ask one more time. Oh, here we have a question from Ben. Is NASA still funded by the US government?
Yes. So NASA is a government organization. So they work really closely together. Yes, they are still US government funded. Yep.
All right. Gonna see if there's any other questions out there. I don't know, Shay, if you saw several people have thanked you for this presentation, said how interesting it was, how amazing it was. I think you really sparked a lot of people, and, go apply for those NASA internships. You learned
Yes,
about it here. So
or any internship that you want. Really go out there and try those things. What's super nice about no matter where you go for an internship, it's going to tell you two things or one thing in either direction. Either you like it and something you want to pursue, or it's something that you really don't like, and thank goodness I didn't apply for this as a job. So going forward,
exactly.
make sure that you're taking all of those opportunities, especially when they're funded by somebody. And you kind of have like a little risk, well, not little risk, no risk, trying these things out. It'll help you decide on your path before you get to college and you take some of these classes, and you don't really know, like, you're like, oh, I'm kind of undecided. These internships will help you decide, like, oh, yes, this is something I want to do, or maybe engineering isn't for me. That wasn't the route I wanted to take.
Exactly.
What was ROTC like? So ROTC, it depends on the branch. I was part of the Air Force branch, and it is a lot of, I don't know if you know what Band of Brothers is, Ben, but for some reason we watch Band of Brothers like every single year. And I think I've learned a lot leadership wise. That's like the summation of it. It's a shorter way of saying everything that we do is a leadership evaluation. We're constantly looking at everyone's leadership style. How can we do better? How can we do different? What types of leadership things should I pull at some points? What should I not use at some points? What's situationally appropriate? That's a lot of what ROTC is like, because you're preparing to be an officer and lead those people. But other than that, going to Norwich, it's a little different than if you went to like a normal college. We wake up every morning, do physical fitness stuff. You get the camaraderie. It's insane, the people you meet that are like-minded, and you really bond with them. And knowing that you're going to have friends all over the country, they just scatter after graduation, and you have those connections everywhere is super awesome. Whereas I might be going to NASA and I might be able to be that connection for someone else in Army who might be going to DC, they might give me a connection somewhere else. So just having those little seeds everywhere is so awesome. And having those friends that are out there doing great things is something you really gain out of ROTC, because you really do go everywhere, and none of your friends are going to go to the same place. So it was really awesome ride. Now I'm finishing out my last semester and I don't regret a single bit of it. I am super excited that I now have a Space Force sweatshirt. They're brand new. So I think I'm also wearing the Space Force shirt. So maybe one day that'll be a branch, and if you're really interested in this, they'll have Space Force ROTCs where you can go there and do space things on a daily basis. That's all I ever wanted.
That's great. Well, everyone, let's thank Shay. Again, I see you've all been thanking her. Great comments in the chat. Thank you all for coming tonight. And I'm going to put another plug in. May 14th, we have an in-person cafe with an engineer from Benchmark Space Systems, and her topic is Mission to the Moon. So it's going to give you another viewpoint of this NASA work and getting back to the moon and what kind of work is being done to get there. So hopefully we'll all see you in person May 14th, but I also hope to see you at some of the other in-person cafes coming up. So thank you all, and have a wonderful night, and keep saying thank you to Shay, because that was a fantastic presentation.
Thank you, everybody, for allowing me to come out here and spew a little bit of passion. It's been a while since I've talked, I think, about my NASA internship, so it was really nice being able to connect with all of you, and I hope you can take something away from it, even if you aren't interested in space. Carly, will you be doing any more of these cafes in the future? I